So I'm Andrew. I am the student pastor here. So if you are visiting with us, I'm going to need you to come back next week and hear the main guy, because I ain't it. I'm not as eloquent with words. I'm just a simple Greenville person, and I don't know much. So I'm just kidding. So I'm just excited to be here and bring the word. It's always fun whenever I get to speak with y'all guys, because I'm used to talking to middle school and high school kids who don't know how to not talk and interrupt me all the time. Thank you, Aiden. The Lord sees that hand. So, before we dive into our text this morning, as Christopher so nicely read for us, I want us to make sure that we are not thinking about this in the terms of our thought processes today, okay? Because if we come at this with the lens of the 21st century, we're going to miss out on a lot of what Jesus is trying to tell his listeners, okay? And so we get into it. Verse 25. Now large crowds were accompanying Jesus. This isn't something new. This isn't something that it's like, wow, there's a bunch of people following Jesus. Like, this is new. No. We've had several times where crowds are hanging out with Jesus. They want to see a miracle. They want to hear what he has to say. And so this plays a big part, because the words that Jesus is going to follow with challenge the listener, even those who are part of, like, they've already committed. They're saying, all right, well, I'm going to follow Jesus. Wherever he goes, I'm going to go. And then you have those who are contemplating, like, is it really worth it for me to, pick up and just follow this guy around? Because typically with, rabbis, they would have people who just followed him around. And so he's going to start kind of chiseling pretty quick here. Verse 26, he says, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother, wife and children, and brother and sisters, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. He takes no time with pleasantries and just jumps to the point with his bold statement. If you don't hate your family, if you don't hate those you are closest to, like, just thinking of this, like, I have to hate my wife, I have to hate, like, my parents, like what are you trying to tell me here? Right? So a few questions just kind of getting into this is, like, why is Luke using this term, this word hate? What is the point for this? Because if you look in Exodus 12, he tells children to honor their parents, to obey them. You look at Ephesians 5:25, Paul tells the men to love your wives as Christ has loved the church. And so, is what Jesus really saying here contrary to everything else that you find in Scripture? The answer is no, because if we look at the correlating verse in Matthew 10, you see that he says, whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. So he's not telling him that you have to hate your family, but there needs to be this giant gap. Like, it's miles and miles, 1 to million. Like, Jesus is far superior in who your allegiance is to than your family, than your spouse, your kids, your brothers, your sisters, your friends. It doesn't matter. Jesus has to be first in priority. I think the reason Luke uses this, because if we jump back just a few chapters earlier in chapter 12, he comes and says, I didn't come to bring peace, but division. Now, for us here in America, in the Western world, whenever someone comes to know who Christ is, there's usually met with, dude, that's awesome, I'm so happy. Like, one of my professors for my Evangelistic strategies. Sorry, like that word's just been hard for me every time I look at it. And so he's sitting there, he's like, so typically, whenever he brings someone to the Lord, he's like, all right, so now what I want you to do is I want you to go and I want you to confess this to somebody else and tell them that you have accepted Christ. Now, one of the notions he makes is like, so if you're in a place where in the world where you can't do that, don't do that. If it's not safe, don't do that. And that's a lot of what we get whenever we look at people in this text, is if they were to go and tell someone, hey, I decided to follow Jesus, they're going to get met with hardships. They're going to get met with, I'm out. Like, what are you doing? This isn't what we've lived up in. This isn't what we've grown to. And so they're going to be met with losing their families. They're going to be losing their spouse, their wife, their husband. It doesn't matter because of the cost to follow Jesus. So I'm going to ask you this. Is it worth it? Is it worth being a disciple of Christ if you might have to eventually lose family members, lose friends? Is it worth it? So typically on at least once a year, sometimes twice a year, just depends on how I'm feeling, we do this thing called like a Q&A night for youth. And I basically tell the kids, it's like, all right, if you have a life question, if you have a Bible question, if you want to know my favorite color, like, ask your questions. And more often than not, we have a student or two who will be like, man, I really want to follow Jesus, but I feel like my friends are pulling me this way. My parents are pulling me this way. Like, I have so many different obligations and things like that. Like, I just don't feel like I have time for Jesus. I don't feel like what I'm doing is enough. And I tell them then, and this is probably the statement that I say the most, is that accepting Christ and accepting the cost to follow Jesus is probably the most important thing that you can ever do in your entire life. Nothing else matters as much as that. And so Jesus continues in verse 26 with, you have to hate your own life. Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes, growing up in the day and age that I've grown up in, and really just, if you look at the news, if you look at any article on social media, it is all about, I got to do what's best for me. That might be cool for you. You do that, you follow Jesus, but he's just asking for too much. Or I have to treat yourself. For those who like Parks and Rec, you got to have that day where you just treat yourself, okay? But what Christ is calling to is that you have to die to yourself. You have to just die to the sinful desires of your heart and follow him. Are there sinful desires in our lives right now that we are choosing those over Christ? And he adds to 27 into this idea of whoever does not carry his own cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. The NET uses carry here as in this is your personal cross. This is, you have to carry it. And these crosses weren't light, It's not like, well, this is actually kind of heavy, but, I don't know, just something light, a feather, sure. Okay, cool. But I really like how the ESV uses the word bear. Christ calls us to bear our cross. There's weight behind that. It's not going to be easy. There's going to be times where we are tempted to put it down. It's like, I just got to take a break for a moment. But if you look in Hebrews 12, it says that for the joy set before him, Christ endured the cross. It's not going to be easy. And we still got a long way to go. But there is joy. There's fulfillment in carrying the cross that he has called us to bear. And so for those listening to the words of Jesus, they would know full well what it meant to carry the cross because they saw countless criminals carrying their cross daily. And they know that it only led in pain, suffering, and eventually death. Jesus is calling them to suffer in his name. You look at John 15:20, and he tells his disciples, remember what I told you, a slave is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they'll also persecute you. If they obey my words, they will obey yours too. So, I know we like to think, being in the first world, we have all of our first world problems. My Keurig decided, or my coffee maker decided it needed to be cycling, and I don't have any fluids to clean it. Oh, my life is just rough. I'm persecuting for Jesus today. I have to go to Starbucks and drink their coffee. So bad. No, like we are called to suffer, and it's gonna vary from person to person, right? So some people are gonna have it harder than others, and that's just a fact of life. But I don't feel that Christ is calling us and calling the listeners then to martyrdom. But we will suffer. We will have hardships, because he says you cannot be my disciple if you're not willing to carry your cross. And so one more time, I'll ask you, is it worth it? Is being a disciple of Christ worth it? So to further bring home this point, Christ gives us two illustrations. Starting in verse 28, we see that he says, for which of you, wanting to build a tower, doesn't sit down first and compute the cost to see if he has enough money to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish the tower at all who see will begin to make fun of him. They will say, this man began to build a tower, or began to build and was not able to finish. So if you've been in Greenville for a good period of time, over on the 69 and Sale Street intersection, there's this like medical office space building place, right? And so while Sarah and I lived at the solarium, every time we drove past it, they took forever to build this building. And so it's like, what's it going to be? What are they going to do with it? Are they finished with it yet? It's like they constantly just did a little bit, stopped, did a little bit, stopped, did a little bit, stopped. And it's like what are they doing? Like even driving to, church this morning, there's where the old Jungle Burger used to be. I don't know if any of y'all know, over by Ivan Smith, right? Like, I don't know what they're doing with it. I really don't. Like, and it's been that way. Like, they tore down Jungle Burger at least 5-6 years ago. And whatever's supposed to be there is not even done yet. So it's, again, you see the point. If you're going to build a tower, build the tower, okay? Sit. Count the cost. Be like, all right, do I have enough money? Do I have enough labor? Do I have enough of this and enough of that? Like, the man who sits and doesn't count the cost will be ridiculed and be made fun of for not counting the cost. So then we move to the king in verse 31. And he says, or what king going out to comfort another king in battle will not sit down first and determine whether he is able with 10,000 to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? If he cannot succeed, he will send a representative while the other is still a long way off and ask for terms of peace. How many Risk players do we have in the building this morning? The Lord sees those hands. Love it. All right, so for those who don't know what Risk is a board game where you are plotting out world domination, okay? And so when you are planning your next attack, planning your next move, you want to make sure that you have enough men to go into the next territory with, that you get 3 dice instead of 2. Because that means you have 1 more dice than the defending player. So therefore, your odds automatically go up, right? And so you want to make sure that you can take out that land and take over New Zealand, or, the all-coveted Australia, which is just in the corner of the map where, like, if you get it, like, you just fortify it, and you're like, this is mine now, right? So a king is wise to sit and think, all right, do I have a bunch of normal men who 10 to 20, that's not right. Or, you might have a Hercules and you might be able to take out 4 or 5 before, getting shot down. So the king needs to be able to sit and count the cost of, is it worth it taking my men into battle with the fact that I might lose this super quick? And so a wise king will be like, I don't like those odds. Go talk to him. Let's do peace. I'm not about that life. And so if he doesn't, a foolish king would just send him off into battle not thinking of the cost. He'll automatically get a humiliating defeat, and he'll lose a ton of men. But a wise will seek for peace before blood can be shed. So reading this, the question that arises to me is, why does Jesus use these two illustrations in light of verses 26 and 27? So whenever we look at the story of the man who's trying to finish the tower, we look at how sad it is that he didn't sit down and consider the cost of building the tower. In the same way, Christ is saying, count the cost. Figure it out before you just up and decide to follow me. Because too often I've seen it here in, the Western side of Christianity. It's like someone will get a couple years into following Jesus, and they're just like, well, I'm done. I'll see you later. This just got too hard, and I did not sign up for this. So they will put it out and leaving. Just drop out and leave. What good is that? And then you see with the king, a wise king will see that he can't beat the other king, and so he'll go for peace. I was listening to Psalms 46 from Shane and Shane this morning as I was coming into the office, and it works perfectly because the psalmist says, come wrestle us and win. Because who's going to wrestle God and win? No one. Okay, it don't work. So again, don't fight with them. Consider the cost. Seek for peace. Follow Jesus. That's what we're talking about. Because the gift of salvation is a free gift. But the cost of being a disciple of Christ will cost you everything. And both stories cause the listener and those who aren't even following Jesus to sit and contemplate the actual cost of following him. Because even those who are, like you might be in here this morning and you don't know who Jesus is. And this is heavy stuff, but man, it's worth it. When you see that the cost is worth the reward. Moving on to verse 33. He says, in the same way, therefore, not one of you can be my disciples if he does not renounce all his own possessions. So is Jesus telling us that you got to sell everything and 100% rely on him? Not entirely. For some people who are called to missions, that's what you're called to. That is what is meant for you. And so you might have to give everything that you have for his sake. But I think putting this with 26 and 27, it's, you have to hate your family more, like you have to pick Jesus over your family, And in the same way, if you're picking your possessions versus Jesus, you always have to pick Jesus. Because Jesus is so much greater than anything and everything that we have. And so we typically don't have idols here in, the 21st century. We're so far above that, right? Man, who's got time for a golden calf in the living room, right? Come on. But we do have your sports team that can be an idol in your life. You might be really into a certain band, and so anytime that band's in town or puts out a new album, you're like, "Ooh, gotta go listen to that. Gotta get it on vinyl." Whenever things like that begin to take place, we begin to worship the created over the creator. And so for me, if you've spent any sort of time with me, I have an addictive personality. And that means that if I'm doing something, I am hyper-focused on it, okay? Whether that be playing disc golf, playing a sport, playing a video game, playing a trading card game, it doesn't matter. Because on top of all of that, I am very competitive. And I have to beat everyone. Sarah will not play team sports with me anymore because I am so competitive. Okay, but thankfully, the Lord is working on redeeming that in me. And so whereas a few years ago, whenever Texas would lose a football game, I'd be like, get it out of here. Ah! I'm not that way anymore. I can go about my day. It's a nice time, okay? I'm heartbroken and I'm sad because in no way should we have lost to TCU 2 weeks ago. No, okay? But it's not something that I am it doesn't harbor in my heart. Because hobbies are well and good. Like, man, Devin, playing guitar this morning, man, loved it. Like, I haven't seen you touch a guitar in, forever. And I'm like, yes. I'm kind of sad that I didn't get to play drums this morning because I haven't played with Devin in 10 years. So, but hobbies are great, that they're good. But whenever they take precedent in our lives and they are above Christ, it begins to be an issue. So Jesus finishes this chapter off by talking about salt and its importance. Salt is good, but if salt loses its flavor, how can its flavor be restored? It is of no value for the soil or for the manure pile. It is to be thrown out. The one who has ears had better listen. I like that. Had better listen. Yeah, you better do it, okay? All right? You listen. Okay, you got ears? Okay. All right, sorry. Okay, so salt was a hot commodity back in those times because not only was it used to flavor food, but it was used to preserve food. And so you wanted something to last a while, you salt that sucker up, okay? And so, but what happens to salt when it loses its saltiness? It's not even good for the manure pile. It's to be thrown and trampled underfoot. As Andy read, what happens to the vine that doesn't produce fruit? It's chopped down. It's cut off. It's sent to the fire. And so I feel like the same is called of a disciple, because we're called to be salt to the world. But what happens when we look more like the world than we look like Christ? And the salt that we once had isn't there anymore. And we begin to look just like the world. We're no good. We're not worth anything. We can't go and be a witness to somebody, because to be a witness, you gotta look different. Because if your life looks the same as everyone else's, there's not much witnessing to do. Because what good are we if we decide that we're going to jump ship and we're not going to be light anymore? We'd rather have the world over our possessions. We'd rather have family over Christ. What's the point? There's no good to be used. And this is a tough thing to ask, is, has our salt lost its saltiness? Because whenever it boils down to it, our lives as followers of Jesus have one thing. Our goal is to make his name known, make his name great, and get everyone to see that and do the same thing. So, why? Why do this? Why do we sit and listen to what Christ said and count the cost? Why would we do this? So I feel like the text this morning is challenging us in 4 different areas to rise up and follow Christ. So, number 1, you may be sitting here this morning and you've let your spouse, your kids, your parents, your siblings, your friends, even your job get in the way of your pursuit of Christ Whether that means you're afraid of what they might think if you say, hey man, I follow Jesus, or they might even be in a place where they're combative of it. And it's like, I don't want to hear about Jesus anymore. Again, we were talking Wednesday, and our kids were like, I just feel pulled, and I feel like I want to follow Jesus, but there's so much getting in my way. Like, I have lost friends because I've decided to follow Jesus. I know someone else who's quit jobs in pursuit of following Christ because the people that they worked with were so detrimental to their walk with Christ. Is Christ worth it? Is Christ worth losing family, losing friends, changing jobs in pursuit of being a disciple of him? Number 2, you may feel like your family supports you in your endeavors to follow Christ, but you fall into the culture of the day of, I have to look out with what's best for me, because what's best for me is better than anyone else. My truth is better than your truth. You might think it's cool, but it's my truth. Or as the Parks and Rec thing goes again, you just got to treat yourself every day, right? Like, this is who you are, and you have to go that way. Christ is calling us to die to ourselves, that who we are is nothing without him in our lives. And we have to submit to his ideas and what he has for us over our own. Because I can tell you, his ways are so much better than ours. His ideas work way better than ours do. So again, is it worth it? Number 3, you may just love acquiring stuff. You have so much possessions that you have to have the latest and greatest. You got to have that next album. You got to have that next car. And that's where you feel like you are. And again, he's asking, am I greater than your possessions? Because our possessions can end up having us covet over somebody else's items, other things. Because are we like the rich young ruler who have kept everything, all the commands of God since our youth, but when Christ says, hey, sell what you got and come follow me, are we left to walk away because we'd rather have our stuff than Jesus? And then lastly, number 4, you may have dabbled in all 4 areas. You might struggle with family. You might struggle with possessions. You might struggle with having yourself greater than you need to be. And you feel like you were once salty, but now you're nothing but salt to be trampled over, or wood thrown into the fire because there's no fruit coming from it. But what does the gardener in the parable say to the master about the tree that's not bearing fruit? Let's just wait one more season. Let's just wait till next year, and if it's not bearing fruit, then we can cut it down. And he does this year after year. And so just this idea, because let me tell you that you might be in here this morning and you feel like you have nothing you can offer Jesus, that's a great place to be in. Because he does it all for us. He does it all through us. And so that brokenness of feeling like we're unuseful salt, Christ can restore that saltiness in us. And so I want you to know that this morning. That despite where we feel like we are in one of these spots, Christ can redeem us. Christ can work that out through us. And so as the band comes up, I made sure to put it in my notes this time because I normally don't. And so, yeah. So my prayer for us this morning, as we go through from here, as we take communion this morning, is that we wrestle, that we challenge ourselves. Where are we in this cost of discipleship? Have we counted what it means, what it costs to be a follower of Jesus or not? Because again, salvation is a free gift, but being a disciple will cost us everything. And I hope that you see that Jesus is worth it every time. Let me pray.